What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with another video. Today, what we're going to get into is an NFL Insider revealing the details or the story behind some of the New York Jets 2024 NFL draft decisions. We had Jeremy Fowler of ESPN share in an article his thoughts on the New York Jets and why some of the things happened. So let's break that down. Why the New York Jets did the things that they did. That can't be right. Anyway, let's get into it. Jeremy Fowler. So he says the Jets were, quote, pretty set on taking Olu Fashanu outside of Rome Odunze still being on the board. Now, this one I find interesting, and I think there's some truth to that the Jets were set on taking Olu, but under the caveat that Rome Odunze was unavailable, because we saw in the Jets documentary, Flight 24, whatever the hell they're calling it these days, I don't remember. Moral of the story, in the Jets documentary they put out last week about the first 2 days of the NFL draft, the Jets called the Atlanta Falcons, and Joe Douglas got word that the Atlanta Falcons were not trading back. They were going to stick and pick. So I find it very hard to believe the Jets were moving up for Olu Fashanu. My assumption is that they tried to get up for Rome, and once they figured out that Rome was not obtainable when the Bears picked him at number 9, they then pivot, trade back a spot with Minnesota. Minnesota comes up and takes J.J. McCarthy. And then the Jets go, okay, we're going to take this kid Olu, who we've had our eye on, Joe Douglas's words, for 3 years now since he first came in as a freshman playing a bowl game because of injury at Penn State. And you have your left tackle of the future. Not only is Olu the tackle of the future, he is also someone who gives you much needed offensive line depth and specifically tackle depth this season with 2 veteran tackles in Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith that missed time last year. Morgan Moses, normally pretty healthy, unfortunately missed time, played through a torn pectoral muscle. He got surgery on that, so we'll see how that holds up in 2024. And Tyron Smith, who hasn't played a full healthy season since 2015. Both those guys, though, really good for Olu to sit and learn behind, but Olu's going to get on the field, my opinion. Also, he mentioned that Brock Bowers was under consideration, but not a major one, so that kind of points to the Brock Bowers smoke screen angle that we had. I believe it was Connor Hughes' report that the Jets were never really in on Brock Bowers, which he was under consideration according to the latest reports from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, but not number 1 on the board. So that, I guess, surprising to some because Bowers was the favorite to end up going to the New York Jets. He did not. Instead, they go with the offensive lineman. They moved back, and Bowers was still there and on the board and available to be taken. But instead, the Jets decide to go on the offensive line with Fashanu. Another name that was brought up a ton for the New York Jets was Troy Fautanu, an offensive tackle out of Washington. But the reason why the New York Jets were not in on him was because they had some long-term durability concerns. Supposedly there was an injury that came up or that was flagged in the late draft process, which is why he ended up being available for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were willing to take that risk on a potential versatile piece on an offensive line. Again, Pittsburgh takes that gamble in taking Fautanu, but the Jets were not comfortable going that route. And while I really like the player and I like the prospect a ton, was someone I mocked to the Jets very, very often, I get it, especially after what they've been through on the offensive line, where unfortunately Mekhi Becton injuries really derailed his career. So they don't want to go down that road again. And I completely understand that. I really do. Finally, not surprised by this one at all, the Jets had Aaron Rodgers watch tape on Malachi Corley. I talked about it in a video recently after the NFL draft that a lot of big name quarterbacks did that. And again, not really all that uncommon. Josh Allen watched tape on the receivers and reported back to Brandon Beane who he liked the best, and they end up taking Keon Coleman. Aaron Rodgers apparently asked to do the same thing and was very high on Malachi Corley and was very excited about that pick. As we saw on draft night, tweeted it out. and they've already had a connection. They've been texting back and forth. Malachi Corley saying like, hey, I want to stay in the guest house. Rodgers actually extending the invite and having him be like, hey, you can stay in the guest house if you want. Again, not really a surprise that Rodgers likes this kind of player because he's had success with guys like that in the past. I mean, Randall Cobb is probably a good comparison for Malachi Corley, a smaller slot receiver, but someone that Aaron Rodgers can check down to and that is going to run with an absolute nastiness to his game. Do I think Malachi Corley is ever going to be a number one receiver? Odds are probably not. But that doesn't mean that he can't be an effective piece and an effective weapon in a deep offense. And that's what I think he's going to be. He's going to be the third wide receiver this year, probably the fifth pass catcher behind. I would also throw in Tyler Conklin and Breece Hall. And if Malachi Corley is your fifth option as a pass catcher, I think that's pretty good for you. Honestly, I do. I think that's a pretty good situation for the New York Jets. So just wanted to come on here today again and talk about some nuggets that we got from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN and NFL Insider on a little bit into the process of why the New York Jets decided to go the route that they did in the NFL draft. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure to leave a like before you go. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you next time.